Atlas is an all-new range of alloy gravel bikes from Focus that lean heavily into the versatility spectrum and could quite reasonably be turned to everything from day-to-day gravel shredding to fully loaded touring. Here in the UK, the bikes are also something of a post-Brexit unicorn, and unlike pretty much every other mainstream manufacturer, Focus has resisted significant price increases. With that in mind, the new Atlas range, I think, is one of the best value for money bikes on the market if you're looking for a truly versatile, do-it-all, one bike to rule them all gravel bike solution. The range is made up of 4 bikes, 3 of which are built up like standard gravel bikes, including the 6.8, as I've been testing here. The range is rounded out by the 6.7 EQP, which is a really interesting touring bike that's fitted with mudguards, rear pannier, dynamos, the lot, and it really hints as to everything you can do with this bike. Now, as always, the full range details are on BikeRadar.com. I will not bore you with them here, and you can check the link in the video description for all the juicy details. Instead, today I'm going to get stuck right into how I found the bike, how it rides, and kind of go through the spec as I go along. Now, if you're listening to Focus, they pitch the bike as a bike to get lost on in real time, which perhaps hints a little bit towards this bike's intentions. It's not a go-fast race wagon, it really is designed to be just a fun, pleasant bike to ride day to day, and that has very, very much been my findings. The overall ride quality of the bike is very relaxed. It's almost unnervingly stable with this weird kind of self-correcting quality at the front end, which makes it a delight to ride on single track and twisty roads. Now, I mentioned this bike is really nice through the corners, and that's most notable, though it is a gravel bike, on the road. Now, the tyres play a big part in that kind of comfort and stability in the corners. The WTB Riddler is one of my favourite tyres, but I do have to acknowledge that I use the Radler, which is the gnarlier version of this tyre, on one of my other bikes, so there's probably a little bit of familiarity there. Nonetheless, I think the tyres are really nicely designed, with a very close-spaced, blocky tread in the centre, which transitions very smoothly to slightly larger lugs on the outside edge of the tyre. There's no awkward kind of squirming as you lean over in the corners, and there's no kind of awkwardness or hesitation as you get knee down and gnarly. Looking at the bike's geometry, all of this adds up. At the front end, we have a head angle of 70.5 degrees. In the context of mainstream gravel bikes, that is seriously slack, and don't forget that a few short years ago, that would have been considered fairly progressive on a cross-country mountain bike. With the bike's stock 45mm wide tyres, combined with the 50mm offset of the fork, this gives the bike a trail figure of 74mm. 65 to 80mm is generally considered to be a high trail figure, so this really sits towards the upper end of that spectrum. Now, for those of you that are not professional bike nerds like me, a high trail figure is generally considered to give a bike a more stable and quite confident feel at high speeds, so that very much adds up to what I've found in testing. Now, I should caveat this and say I've never in my entire life ridden a bike and thought, whoa, this is so unpredictable, I can't keep it under control. But it is notable when you go on some bikes, it just has that very stable, confident feeling, and this is one of them. The front end is not the only place where the geometry is fairly progressive. The eagle-eyed viewers amongst you will notice that the bike has a stubby 17mm stem, again, which would have been considered quite progressive a few years ago on a mountain bike. Now, you can't just have a short stem without increasing the reach, and on this size large test bike, we have a reach figure of 450mm. Again, that is very, very long for a gravel bike. Shorter stems combined with longer reach, as we all know by now with mountain bikes, mean that your weight is more pitched towards the back of the bike rather than over the front wheel, so you get less of that kind of tipping forward feeling on steep terrain. Sticking with the front end briefly, despite the bike's 45mm tyres, I will say the front end is a little bit more dull on bigger hits. This is probably due to the forks, which bear in mind are built to take luggage, but not quite as svelte on a more lightweight race-focused gravel bike, so you don't get that lovely kind of fluttering splay when you hit rougher terrain. the deeper than average alloy wheel set with the relatively high spoke count could also play a part here. Now of course, front end comfort and to be honest, overall comfort in a bike is dictated most by the tyres. These are set up tubeless and I've been running them at relatively high pressures because I've not been doing too gnarly riding just now. If I wanted the squashiest, most comfortable ride possible, I could always drop a fair bit out of the front tyre. If you are a very delicate flower, you could always fit 650B wheels and run even wider tyres, though at that point I would perhaps suggest you should just be riding a mountain bike. Now to accommodate those very wide tyres without using a drop chainstay or a funky yoke, Focus has done something that if you're a tech weenie, you're not gonna like. This bike has adopted boost spacing. That is correct, mountain bike boost spacing, front and rear on this bike. Boost spacing is the de facto normal on pretty much all mountain bikes these days, and it sees a 148 by 12mm rear axle paired with a 15mm by 110mm axle on the front. Boost spacing allows the flanges on the hub to be wider, which in theory makes a stronger wheel overall. It also means that, as I mentioned, manufacturers don't have to use a drop chainstay or a funky yoke to accommodate wider tyres. Now on this particular bike, I don't really think it's that big an issue. You're not going to fit your 80mm deep whoosh hoops onto this bike. It's not a go-fast race bike. And in fact, I would say that the majority of mountain bike wheel sets could even suit this bike better than a gravel wheel set. However, it could be a bit of a bummer if you already have some really nice gravel wheels and you'd like to fit them to this bike, because it's not practically speaking possible to convert a non-boost hub to boost. So you're not going to be able to fit those wheels to this bike. In any case, I don't think the majority of riders buying this bike are going to be desperate to upgrade the wheel set anyway. I measured the Alex Rims Boondocks rims at 32mm deep, which is considerably deeper than most alloy gravel rims on the market. They're also built with a sensible high spoke count, which gives the wheels a really sure-footed ride quality, and I have no doubt they would last the test of time. They set up tubeless very easy, and the hubs look pretty easily rebuildable, so no complaints there. The cable routing is also a real highlight on this bike. You'll notice they're all internally routed through a neat little hole in the top of the headset cover. Now I have to be honest, this bike came to me pretty much as you see it, so I haven't had a chance to dismantle the system. But looking at Focus's manual, it actually doesn't look too hateful. As well as looking beautifully neat and cool, if you are going to be using this bike for bike packing with, your kind of typical handlebar roll, having those cables out of the way will make your life much easier. You will have already seen from the images of the touring version of this bike, but you can fit pretty much anything you want to this bike. We have triple bosses on the fork, the now de facto top tube bag mount. We have 2 sets of bottle cages in the middle of the bike, some on the underside of the down tube, mudguard mounts, pannier rack mounts, and dynamo headlight mount, which, if you know me, I'm a bit of a dynamo botherer, so this makes my heart glow as bright as an LED light. Now from the material Focus have provided me, there is no word on whether you can fit a front rack or like a porteur style rack to the front of this bike. But each of those mounts on the legs for your anything style cages are rated to carry up to 3 kilograms each. Focus actually produced their own accessories for this bike, including mudguards and rear racks and this little top tube bag. But I think you shouldn't have any issues fitting most standard mudguards and racks to this bike. Now I love top tube bags. They keep your snacks at hand, you can put little multi-tools, whatever, really close to hand. You don't have to faff about with saddle rolls. The only thing that slightly disappointed me with this one is the kind of plastic stiffening strip at the bottom of the bag is totally exposed. I went out for a particularly cold ride with an Aldi own brand Snickers in there, and I thought there was something wrong with the bike because it was rattling so much on the bottom of the bag. Now a strip of packing foam or something similar would put that to bed instantly, but it's kind of annoying that it's a problem in the first place. Now on to the Groupset. We have lavished praise upon Shimano's GRX gravel Groupset. And I'm actually not going to say too much more on this. Although we've promised it before, we do actually have a review of this coming very soon. from Matthew Loveridge, so stay tuned for that. This particular build has more than ample range for anything you could reasonably want to do on this bike. In the low end, we have a 30-34 gear, so sub 1-to-1, and unless you are towing a trailer with a loaded bike, you will be able to get up anything with this bike. It also has a suitably high top end, and I haven't managed to spin it out even on my smashiest road efforts. I've been riding my winter road bike a lot this winter, funnily enough, and coming onto this bike, it's just got a very different kind of feel, and I think a lot of that is down to the gearing. In fact, I've gone full supple life, channeling the energy of Russ on pathless pedals, and I've even fitted flat pedals to this bike, riding much as you see me here. And I have to say I really enjoyed it. There's something about sub 1-to-1 gearing which just makes me want to noodle about and enjoy just being on the bike. And it's been a very refreshing thing, and I think I want this gearing on my road bike. I have to acknowledge that personal preference plays a big part here, but the bars are also a highlight of build. I really like the overall shape. They're wide without being excessively so. There's enough reach on the ramps that I get, useful hand positions on the hoods as well as a bit further back. I like the subtly flattened tops. There's enough, room down in the drops to actually use them. And perhaps most importantly, there's not an excessive amount of flare. These present a really nice middle ground where they give you a bit more control off-road, but they're also not totally hateful to use on the road. Now in contrast, and I must stress this is just personal preference, I don't love the saddle. The front end's a little bit narrow, and if I'm riding in bib shorts, the covering is just a bit too soft and squashy for my rock solid peach. Again, it's not unreasonable to want to swap a saddle if you're buying a new bike, but for me, it doesn't quite hit the mark. It should be clear by now, I really like this bike, but I think it's useful to compare it to other bikes on the market. Most other brands have a bike which is comparable to the Focus Atlas. I'm thinking your Canyon Grails, your Cannondale Topstones, or the cheaper alloy versions of the Specialized Diverge. Now looking at the range, the Canyon Grail AL7 is probably the closest in terms of spec. You get almost an identical group set, though you do get a name brand DT Swiss wheel set with the Canyon. Now, the post-Brexit price for the Canyon has rocketed up to £2,099. In comparison, this bike is £1,899. That is a significant difference in price, and bear in mind that Focus is a more traditional brand which is sold through local bike shops. It's not like Canyon, which is a consumer direct brand. We're filming this video in mid-January, and in recent weeks we've seen most manufacturers, and I should stress it's not just Canyon, have increased their prices across the board. With that in mind, I got in touch with Focus to find out whether they intend on increasing the price of this bike, and they've confirmed that for now, the price will remain static. If you are in the market for a do-it-all, genuinely one bike to rule them all gravel bike solution, and you don't mind the fact it's maybe a little bit heavier, a little bit more on the chilled out end of the spectrum, I would say pick one of these up. They present really good value for money. You're very unlikely to be disappointed with, well, everything you can do with it. And the ride quality is just so nice. If you wanted to make it a super go fast, smashy gravel wagon, sure, put a longer stem on it and slam the front end, maybe get a lighter wheel set. But for the majority of riders, this is the type of bike we should be buying. I could put mudguards on this and road tires, and it would be a very competent winter road bike. Or I could fit those big fat 650B wheels and it's a pseudo mountain bike. Now, of course, all of this is just one wannabe gravel influencer's opinion, and what really matters is what you think. As always, please leave any questions in the comments. I do love reading them. Now, if you want the full fat scoop, check those links in the video description. We've got everything you want to know about this bike on BikeRadar.com. And of course, don't forget to like, subscribe, and click that bell icon so every time we upload a video like this, you'll get a notification.